Welcome to the course, Game of Thrones and Its Medieval Worlds. I'm Dr. Hayes, and I'm one of the instructors running this course this semester. As you'll see there at the top of this course policy sheet, your first reading assignment is to read this document very carefully, because by staying in this course, you are acknowledging that you're aware of the policies and practices described in it. So, as I said, I will be one of two instructors, Queen of the E8, as I jokingly call myself. I have a few methods by which a student can contact me. By email is probably the most expeditious, although you're also welcome to visit me in office hours, Mondays and Wednesdays, late afternoon, and then Tuesday mornings, 11 to 12, and by appointment in 203 West Bondurant, so the side of Bondurant Hall closest to Paris Yates Chapel. I understand if you're taking this course because you're remote from the Oxford campus that this in-person meeting may not be convenient, but you do want something a little bit more intimate than an email conversation. So I'm happy to talk via FaceTime or Skype. I am pretty well versed in using both of those programs. The other instructor this semester is Mr. Jacob Agner, the self-designated sellsword of words, i.e. the discussion facilitator, who really, for many parts of the course, is your first line of defense. So I'll explain more in a moment what I mean by that. Jacob is available via email, on campus, if you email him and arrange for a prior meeting, or via meetings on FaceTime. So again, you'd arrange those latter two by contacting him via email. So Mr. Agner will be running the discussion element of this course and evaluating your written work, of which there is a goodly bit, given that this is an online course and we are quote unquote meeting in our shared space on Blackboard and not in person, and so verbal exchanges are translated into written ones, and so he is the person who will be evaluating your written work, running the discussions, reading your discussion posts, about which you'll learn more in a moment or two. As I say there at the bottom of the segment about instructors, you're welcome to contact either of us to discuss the course material. If your question relates more to a technological issue, you'd probably be better served emailing me, and that's sort of superstructural questions about you're getting on Blackboard if you're having trouble with a quiz, and even then I may not be able to answer it, and I'll have to kick your question over to IT. If your question concerns something a little bit more granular and particular regarding a discussion post or a grade you received on your written work, Mr. Agner is the person whom you'd want to contact. So as you'll soon learn, I'm the voice behind all of the lectures. So if you have a question about either the material in the lecture or getting the video to run or something like that, you can contact me. And Mr. Agner also knows the material, but yeah, he will be more intimate with each of you on a personal level, since he's evaluating your work. And it looks like I slipped past the next part of the course syllabus. Yes, description. So George R.R. Martin's literary franchise, The Song of Ice and Fire, has inspired a popular interest in the Middle Ages, hence this course. In this course, we will seek to understand this medieval appeal by studying Season 1 of HBO's Game of Thrones. More importantly, we will consider what is at stake when a historical period is translated for a modern audience. In addition to viewing Season 1 of Game of Thrones, you will read several key medieval texts full of icons and customs that evoke the Middle Ages for 21st century viewers. Game of Thrones Season 1 is included on the syllabus as part of the course's readings. No prior familiarity with the franchise is required. So, in a nutshell, yes, we are watching a television show, and then looking at some books that informed it. And by this, as you will soon learn in this week's more substantial lecture, I don't mean, yes, George Martin just translated it right from these written pages into, his own literary franchise, and then it's snatched from those pages onto the screen of the HBO show. I mean, it really is a more complicated process of transmutation and adaptation. So we'll be reading a text like Beowulf is perhaps one that is both familiar to y'all and seems like an analog for a television show that has so much blood, guts, and gore and violence in it. But of course, the text maybe doesn't reference anything particular out of Beowulf. But how do we get this just whiff of Beowulf? In the show as we're watching it. And so George Martin did indeed say, yes, Beowulf is a medieval text that was familiar to him when he was writing the literary franchise. One more note about the course itself. It satisfies the pre-1500 requirement for English majors, and it counts toward the medieval studies minor. So I am a professor in the English department, so if you have more particular questions about the English major, you can feel free to ask me those, and I am the director of the medieval studies minor, so I know lots and lots about that, in addition to Game of Thrones. Yes, so some learning outcomes that you'll experience this semester. So you will know more about medievalism. So what the heck is that? That is how the Middle Ages are translated for later audiences. So in this first lecture that you'll be looking at this week, I talk a little bit about a movie made now about 15 years ago called A Knight's Tale, starring the now deceased Heath Ledger. So this obviously isn't a text, if you're familiar with it, that means to accurately capture the Middle Ages, but it's like, what about it feels sort of medieval? And it's like, we're going to be drilling down this semester into that medieval-esque element of Game of Thrones, where it's like, yeah, it obviously evokes the Middle Ages, but anybody who's looking for historical accuracy would surely cringe. How to assess the relationship between written and non-literary texts composed centuries apart. So, this is relevant both to the Game of Thrones show, which adapts from medieval texts, as well as texts written within the quote-unquote medieval period, because it is indeed a 1,000-year ambit of time. So, indeed, like, what does warfare in the story of Beowulf have to do with representations of warfare written, some 6 or 7 centuries later by Thomas Malory, as he's writing something of a chronicle of the English War of the Roses in the 15th century. So after taking this course, you will learn how to think about the Middle Ages, in particular, how to locate its texts in particular moments in this broad chronological field, as well as key medieval icons and paradigms that 21st century artists associate with the Middle Ages. So that is to say, we're going to drill down and map out the Middle Ages in a little bit more detail. So if you are watching any kind of show in the future that it's like, oh yeah, it's drawn from the Middle Ages, you can explain to your friend in a little more detail, like, well, what period within the Middle Ages, are they talking about? Because this generalization, while like a really handy device, is kind of rough and ready and really sort of inaccurate. So indeed, what is this very textured period that we're going to be looking at, albeit through like the opposite end of the telescope, through the lens of the television show Game of Thrones? After taking this course, students will be able to perform basic academic tasks, so interpreting literary texts for their subtexts, studying non-literary texts. So if your parents say, oh my goodness, my money is going toward you're studying a television show, oh my word, you can say, no, I'm becoming more adept at studying a non-literary text. So I do think that this is valuable in that a person would become a more intelligent consumer of popular culture, and indeed like how it does draw upon, in some cases, more erudite analogs that the author had in mind. So we're going to write papers with attention to process, progress, and product, adjust academic habits to the conventions of an online course. So that's maybe the biggest uphill struggle for some of you. And you're going to learn how to contribute to online discussions in a cooperative and productive manner. So this class, in addition to being online, is also an English course, which means, there is going to be a lot of writing for you to do this semester. I scrolled down a bit there to required materials, so there's a list of 4 books that I ordered through the bookstore, but however else you're able to get them, good luck and Godspeed with that. I've listed them there in the order in which we're going to be studying them. I believe that it comes to less than $50, even if you buy all of those books brand new. Please do get the editions that I designate here, because it will be a raging nightmare when I call out certain page numbers and you can't find it or don't know what I'm talking about. So I think if there's a Kindle version of these exact texts, that there is some way to figure out like what page I'm on, and to correlate that. So that's a learning curve that I myself am climbing in as you convert some of my text to the Kindle verse. Looking down at media, so you need to get your hands on Game of Thrones Season 1 somehow. So there is a copy of it, my own personal copy, on reserve at the library. Maybe you have some kind of access to HBO, but you are responsible for viewing these on your own before we cover them in class. So I am not going to be quote unquote screening them here in this online format in any way. Lastly, you need a reliable internet connection, because you will be consuming about an hour or so of lectures, sometimes 2 of them per week. So if in a given week you have to watch a television show and do some reading, I sometimes split that up into 2 lectures. So I think the greatest amount that you would have is maybe like 75 minutes or so. So it's not too bad. But nonetheless, you don't want to have to wrangle with a slow internet connection, among other things. Here is the part of the syllabus where I'm going to explain how the course is set up on the week-by-week basis. So your Blackboard course has a left-hand sidebar with a tab called Week by Week, and the course is then broken down into its 15 weeks. So including this semester, that would be Thanksgiving. So you won't have any assignments due per se, but I might have some instructions up there for the end time, which is just around the corner when you get back from Thanksgiving. So I'll have your work posted there every Sunday by noon. So as you will see in a moment what all of that entails, as I listed here below. So very first item, read or watch. So here are the books and the episodes that you must complete for the week. These are also replicated later on in this document in a more conventional syllabus style drill down. So those 2 things will correlate. If I do make some kind of change as we wade deeper into the semester, of course I will email the heck out of everybody and adjust it online. But I honestly don't anticipate making any changes because it's a pretty tightly focused and smooth running course that I've planned for y'all. This business here that is called Listen. So this is where I will post the links to my lectures. They are available via YouTube. So maybe not like the most quote unquote elegant format, but it does allow for closed captioning, and it is something that's also free and widely available. So I hope that enables ease of use for all of you. So complete. So each week, this folder will contain material relevant to 2 tasks. So any given week, the 2 ways that you need to punch in with us will be taking a quiz and punching in on the discussion board. And so obviously The quizzes are going to be different week to week. I anticipate all of them having something like 10 questions for a 10-point quiz. Some weeks you'll have a 20-point quiz if there's an unusually heavy amount of work that week. And then discussion board, sometimes you'll have 2 posts due, 150 words each. Sometimes you'll have just 1 post due, 250 words. And if your friendly neighborhood sellsword tells me, okay, these guys are working really hard, let's not have a discussion post next week, we'll give them a break. Maybe they have a paper coming up around the corner. I can say, okay, you maybe get a buy on doing a discussion post, but you should anticipate having both of these items due each and every week. Here at the very bottom of your list of things to do every week, I will have an item called Achieve. So you'll find a list of intellectual goals and material tasks that you will have accomplished by the week's end. Here I speak to the course requirements and evaluations, so quote unquote, like what will you be graded on, but also what kinds of activities are the sellsword and I are going to keep you busy with for the next 15 weeks as you make your way through season 1 of Game of Thrones, and more importantly, 4 seminal medieval texts. So for starters, quizzes, you will take a quiz each and every week that covers my lectures and any materials that you consume. So that would be books and HBO television show. These quizzes will usually consist of 10 questions. If you have an unusually heavy week, I will give you more questions and the quizzes will be worth more. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I feel like if you have more work due in a given week, I should, give you the chance to kind of plump up your quiz grade, so to speak, and really, knock it out of the park. So quizzes must be completed each Sunday by 5 p.m. And as you will see, looking down at the syllabus, our course runs Monday through Sunday. So the week opens on Mondays. Of course, I'll have the work loaded up a little bit early so that people can get a start. But everything is due Sunday by 5 p.m. So that's consistent throughout the entire semester. So if you want to think, fresh start every Monday with your new lesson, they're waiting for you. Discussion, 30% of the grades. So normally in a conventional brick and mortar class, it would not be worth 30%. Class discussion, class participation might be worth 10%. How and why is it worth so much? So this is your discussion board posts that you have due every week, just about. They will constitute a formidable portion of your work and grade for the course. So to make it relevant to the class and more interesting, there will be a little bit of a blood sport element to this discussion board. So everybody will be participating in the Throne Bowl, all 8 teams. So what team are you on? You'll find out in a moment. But this is what you will do each week. You will have at least 1 online post due. At the very beginning of the semester, they will be awarded points according to this system. So the check plus, check minus grades that you see there, 2 points, 1 point, or 0 points. I anticipate that we will probably change that grade scale later in the semester to make the ones later in the semester worth more, because your writing will have improved and you'll want to be able to put your foot on the gas in the second part of the semester and get more points under your belt and have those better posts be worth a greater proportion of your grade. So if you have just 1 post due, it's worth, you need to write 250 words. If you have 2 due, it must be at least 150 words. And I will, of course, remind you to death, how long they need to be. In order to provide your discussions with some structure, they will take place in groups. And so these are groups that will remain the same throughout the entire semester. So what are these discussion groups? Well, I've put you in one of 8 houses, hence I am queen of the E8. And so hopefully they all appear here on the screen in one glorious ambit. Yes, they do. So make sure that your name is listed there. Pretty sure that I just took it alphabetically off the roster, so you are somewhat randomly assigned, except by accident of what your your last name is. So blame your parents if you don't like the house that you got stuck with. These houses are just devices, so, and it's also just to have it jibe with the material of the course, so it doesn't mean anything if you're in House Baratheon. You don't have to behave in a certain role-playing kind of way. I could have called them Group 1 and Group 2, but that would have been more boring than putting these interesting Game of Thrones family names on them. And these are all names of families and groups of people that are relevant to the first season of Game of Thrones. So for those of you who are Game of Thrones purists, who've seen every blessed episode and read every single word that George R.R. Martin has written, you will say, oh, there are houses that are missing. What about the Tyrells and the Martells and, Patience? That comes later on in the series, but not this semester, because we're only focusing on season 1. So these are your houses in which you will conduct discussion each week. So you're going to make an individual post, and to some extent, you're going to converse with people in your house. So let's look at what I call the rules of engagement. Be sure that you post in the correct house. So when you log into Blackboard and look under the discussion section, you will see there that the names of those houses are in the discussion section for each week. So go into the correct house. By the time you get to week 2 or 3, you will know very well what house you're in and know who your fellow members are. You're going to be introducing yourselves this week. So, make friends with other members of your house. Here are the rules for engagement. So this is very, 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 very important. Each week, one member of each house will serve as the king and the other as the hand. So this will rotate such that you'll only have to serve in these positions occasionally. So anybody who's the king one week, then that position shifts to the next person the following week. So it will rotate through all 5 of you a few times, so probably 3 times over the course of our 15-week semester. On a normal week, so here I hope the cursor appears here. I'll let it dance next to this point. On a normal week, the king will post first before 5 p.m. on Wednesday. So if you're the king for that week, you are in the hot seat, so to speak. I'm basing this on part of Arthurian legend that Arthur would not eat until he had seen some kind of miracle or heard about some sort of adventure, and thus the whole table kowtowed to the king's desires and whims when they were all at a feast. So the king has something of a preferential position, but also you are in the hot seat, but you get to set the tone for the discussion to some extent. Now be mindful of the fact that the rest of your house is waiting for you to post if you are the king. So you want to get your post up there in a timely fashion if this is your job for the week. It benefits you to post early so that the rest of your house can get their posts up there, because you're kind of like the go person for your house for that week. Now, the position that the hand occupies each week is that he or she must respond to the king's post. So, again, that rotates every week. But you want to make sure if you're the hand or the king that you know what your job is. The hand has to take account of what the king said. And so, of course, the other house members are encouraged to respond to each other. You're allowed to post more than once a week. You're allowed to post, more than the bare minimum word-wise. And have something of a rich discussion, because I think as you'll see, yes, it does benefit your individual score. Your sellsword, Mr. Agner, will, award you a higher grade if your post is richer and more detailed and has more evidence from the text and seems like it engages more with the current conversation in your house. But, given that you're all working together, having a better discussion benefits other members of the house as well. So we will begin this scheme in week 2. So sit tight this week. This week is something of an introductory week. So we will not respond